But no, when that flood happens, when that hurricane hits, and when that place gets wiped out in one part of the world, we're going to be there.
Sure.
And we will pay out, and they'll be back on their feet. I remember thinking, there's a reason why I write this bit of code. It has a link. And if you can link people and employees, and it's very difficult, like I said, in some areas, to the reason of why they have to turn up to work on a Monday and do a really long week, not because they get paid, because you've already got them through the door, so which means you must be paying them enough money.
Yeah.
If you can then explain to them the reason why their role is really important and it has a purpose and a vision, they'll stay a bit longer.
Mike, thanks for joining me on the podcast.
No problem. Thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. Right, well, let's get straight into it. You've worked for some really successful brands, Mike, from the AA to KPMG to Barclays and beyond. So for the people that are listening to this podcast that are, I guess, right at the beginning of their tech career, whether that's as a software engineer or some other type of role, what advice would you give them? What do you wish you knew when you started out your journey?
Well, I wouldn't say lessons learned. I've looked back because I've had a couple of these questions about what would you tell your younger self.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think I always had the attitude of find something you enjoy.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be. I know it's a bit cliche, but find the passion. And in my case, it was technology. It was coding early years. You know what I mean? I'm talking about sitting around on a ZX Spectrum. For people who want to go and Google that, go and have a look.
Wow.
But I'm talking about, I found for me just a joy of being able to kind of switch off from, I did a lot of sports. So for me, it was sports and then technology.
Yeah.
But I would say for anyone who's looking to get into any type of career, regardless if it's software or technology or business or finance, is you have to be able to enjoy it because you're going to be doing it for a long time, especially if you enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, you'll have multiple careers, right? And you'll change and you'll swap and you're still looking for that thing that gets you up on a Monday morning.
Yeah.
But for me, my lesson was always, there was no plan. The plan was to have fun, to enjoy myself and to enjoy something I enjoy doing. Whether that was going to be successful or not, it was not really in the plan.
Sure.
Okay, I don't know what success actually means.
Yeah.
It means different things to different people.
That was a byproduct of...
That was not the aim. It was not the aim. If I wanted to if the aim was to make a lot of money or go and live in a foreign place, or those would be aims. I didn't have those aims. My aim was really I'm very happy-go-lucky. So for me, it's day by day, week by week, and that was probably it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But whatever I did to the best of my ability, and I chose things that I was good at, and I chose things that interested me, because I think that's what keeps you getting up in the morning.
Yeah, and it sounds from a high level almost like common sense, but common sense is not common practice, is it? You know, and the amount of people out there, if you did a survey and said, do you enjoy what you do? Do you really love it? I think the majority of people would probably say no, if they were being completely honest with themselves.
Yeah, and there are means to that, because sometimes you have to be able to provide. Okay, we don't live in a total socialist world where we can all go to work and get paid the same salary. That's not a reality check. But I think I would rather make minimum wage and enjoy something, but then also move to a place where I can afford to live.
Yeah.
Right? And I had this conversation with my children, which is, if you want to live in London and you want to live in central London and you want to live in zone 1, then realistically, being an artist, you can be a very poor artist, and potentially maybe not the best place to become an artist. Yeah. Okay, maybe then go to the south of France and go and live somewhere that's a lot cheaper and affordable. So if you find the passion, find somewhere you can actually afford to do it as well. And I think there's a realistic check, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to become a barista, become the best barista. Okay, but maybe then having the ideology that you're going to live in central London in a flat in Covent Garden making coffee may not be reality.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think you need to temper that was not my plan. My plan was not to live in London or in central London or make a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
Mine was really a passion in technology and enjoying what I could do with it to help people with problems and solving. So that was my passion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That turned into a career.
Okay.
And then there was a certain point in time when you kind of then start to meet people and you start to see what other people are doing, that you start saying, well, why can't I do that? Right.
And you started out on that journey as an engineer. You said,
software programmer. So I started off, came out, did a computer science degree at university, did a computer science A level. Yeah. Just enjoyed computer science. It was one of those things that, like I said, I just enjoyed putting instructions into a computer and getting a bunch of results that came out the other end. So yeah, first job as a software programmer, writing in C, low-level C.
Wow.
But that was the language of choice back in the day, right? And that was it. That's where I started.
I was just over the weekend at the History of Computer Science Museum in Cambridge, I think.
I want to go there.
Yeah, and I was looking at some of the older computers that were made, with C and C++, and that was the embedded programming that was built within them, and fascinating.
Totally. And I think even when I meet new grads now and I talk to people in my team, and I haven't written any code for about probably, I'm talking production ready code for about 15, maybe 16 years now, actually. The conversations we're having are still relevant as the ones I had 30 years ago. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it still exists until someone changes it on a 1 and a 0, compiling to do something. Yeah. And it doesn't matter how many layers of abstraction you put on top of it, and how simple you make the language, and how auto-generated the code is. Eventually, it ends up as a 1 or a 0. That's a simple fact. Yeah. It really is. And so if you can understand the layers of abstraction between the layers of the code and understand the levels of complexity it goes through, it still ends up at the same endpoint. So the conversations I have with my engineers makes me credible because I've been at that sharp end. Sure. Yeah. It very much is like in the analogy of building a house. The architect may draw and define the great house, but if they haven't laid a brick sometimes, it's very difficult for them to bring that to life. Yeah. You're relying on good engineers, and to have that conversation and having been at the sharp end of that stick gives you credibility early on, especially in the roles that I'm playing. Right?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, for the past couple of years, you've been a leader, you've been a CTO, you've been running engineering teams. What do you think makes a good leader in technology?
I would say know your limits. I would say be open. I would say ask the group, because I think the power of the group is far stronger than the individual, right? And I would say that there's continuously learning. So again, even on the way over here, I'm listening to things on a podcast, I'm reading articles on medium.com continuously. I'm continuously ingesting things, right? It's like a continual mind dump of what's happening in technology or even in the world. I think just learning and being curious and just asking the question, like if you don't understand how something works, I really struggle to then sleep. Yeah. You know what I mean? I need to know why, if I plug that in, that thing goes on over there. Sure. You know what I mean? I need to understand the lineage of that. That's just who I am as a person. Yeah. But that makes me curious, right? So if something doesn't work, I would try and take it apart. It may not go back together again. Yeah. But I now know how exactly I took it apart. Yeah. And for me, that makes me very curious. And so when I'm building and defining technology and platforms and systems, sometimes just having a leap of faith and saying, well, I understand how A, doesn't know how it gets to B. Oh, no, I need to understand how the user interface talks to the API that talks to the database. I need to understand that, right? Yeah. I may not have to write it or code it anymore, but I'm very curious as to why it does that. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I love everything from Medium to Substack to podcasts to blogs and everything in between, right? It's an addiction at this point, but it's the way to continuously stay sharp and up to date. If it's your hobby, if it's your hobby, it's like if your hobby is trains or planes or whatever it may be, there's something you're really interested in. You're always reading up about it. Yeah. Right. And for me, technology is like that. Right. It's one of those things that's just, it was a hobby that turned into a degree, that turned into a first job, that then turned into the last 30 years of my life. Right? Yeah. So along those 30 years, at some point, your chief risk officer told you, Mike, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. That's right. Which I love. Tell me a little bit more about that concept. I joined the company back in 2011, and I would say still wet behind the ears, but it's the first leadership role. I came in and I thought I had all the answers because I'm like, I've been doing this at that point, about 15, 16 years. Yeah. So I thought, I know what I'm doing. I've joined the company. I didn't understand the culture, and that's very important. You need to understand how quickly a company can also adapt to change. Yeah. So it's pointless coming in and thinking, it's like working for Spotify that has a continual release mechanism. And you go and join the government, and they're like, we release once a quarter. Yeah. And you're like, Similarly, when I joined this company, I came in guns a-blazing, thinking I had all the answers to all their problems. And so off I went, changing that, introducing new technology, trying to change the team organization, trying to change the structure, creating roadmaps, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually one of the senior leaders said to me, it's not what you do.
Yeah.
It's how you do it here. And I didn't understand what she meant until about a year later, the 20 things I wanted to do, I achieved one of them. And I thought I failed. And she said, well done. I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, you got that. Here, it's very difficult for change. So it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And you've now understand that the pace of change can only be accommodated by certain organizations at a certain pace.
Yeah.
So I think what I learned then was you can come in and be very aggressive with your, whatever you want to think about your agenda. I've got a new job, I need to make big changes. Well, actually, all that means is that you probably pissed off a lot of people.
Yeah.
Okay, because you didn't listen.
Yeah.
And you didn't understand their culture. And you didn't really talk and understand maybe some of their history or understand the empathy behind the decisions that have already been made in the technology stack, etc.
Yeah.
So all you came in was it's not a blank piece of paper. So sometimes organizations will have history and you need to appreciate that history. So once you understand that, then you start to understand how to get things done.
Yeah.
And then you can change it. So I'm not saying accept the status quo. What I'm saying is challenge it once you've got some credibility. Otherwise, you're just a name. They don't know who you are. So you have to go and really make relationships, and you need to knock on a lot of doors, and people need to know who you are. And when they get to know you, they trust you. And at the end of the day, it's people trust people. It's a very similar aspect of trying to get changes on. When you come in, if people don't know who you are, they kind of, their guard will go up, and they'll be like, no matter how good the idea was, it's how you implemented it. That didn't work. And I've been in lots of organizations where it's failed. Because it was not what they did, it's how they did it.
Yeah, and people like to work with people and for people that they know, like, and trust. And to get to that point, you're absolutely right. Going in there and trying to give them the solution before you even understand the problem is not the way to do it. You need to first sit down with the stakeholders, with the team, understand the pain points, understand the struggles and the challenges and everything they're going through. And then, and only then, can you give them an answer and a path and a solution and a roadmap. But I've seen it a million times before where people try to take ideas and concepts from previous companies and they might not work in that culture, it might not work in that team.
And you have to make change. I mean, you think about large organizations that have transitioned really well. You think about, the way, Steve Jobs then passed on the mantle. I mean, nothing was fundamentally changed, but they grew successfully, right? So I think as you think about moving into an organization and taking on a new role, you have to respect what was before you. And you have to listen to what happened before you then start jumping in. Yeah. But you leave it too long and you don't do something, people are then like, not very effectual, are you? You haven't really done much.
Sure.
So there's a really fine line, and you need to really have all your kind of senses about you as you start to navigate a new organization, right? Yeah. Of how quick change can be adapted, who the people are, who the players are. You have to be a chameleon. In one organization, you're X, and another you're Y. When you talk to somebody in one team, you've got to be an engineer. When you talk to somebody else in another team, you've got to be a CTO. Yeah. You've got to be able to play all those roles, right? Yeah. And then sometimes just shut up.
Yes. Yeah.
And just listen and learn. And then sometimes just admit it. I don't have all the answers. You know what? That's okay.
So you talked about change a few times there. I guess you've worked in technology for over 30 years now. So what's like the biggest shifts that you've seen over the past 3 decades in terms of change and in terms of, I guess, not evolution, but more like revolution when it comes to the world?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is, back in the day, the IT, coding, development, and all those teams were literally in the basement.
Yeah.
Okay. I never saw the business, right? I was building business applications. I never spoke to anyone in the business. Yeah. It was done through a BA or a PM. It's like Chinese whispers. Yeah. You know what I mean? I want this system with these fields. You build it, you release it, and they go, that's not what we wanted.
Yeah, very waterfall approach.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And you're like, oh my God, that wasn't great. I thought I was building the right thing because you told me to build the right thing. And then eventually, as Agile Manifesto came along and people started to think about pizza-sized teams, as they say, how big the team needs to be.
Yeah, the Jeff Bezos idea.
Yeah, exactly. And I understand it all, and it all works because there's a reason why it works. And then the whole thing about, people think purple, and what I mean about that is when you look at your team, if you have the blue team and the red team, and there's not enough purple around the table, it's because your team is lopsided, and business is blue maybe, and developers are red. What you need to do is get purple. So if you get them together, you get a better mix. You know what I mean? And that's the important bit.
So I guess the biggest change that you've seen, I mean, sure, technology has changed, but it's more of a people thing that you're talking about, the way that people interact, the way they work together, the way that they communicate and solve problems.
Together, yeah. I think
together,
that's the biggest thing. The biggest thing now, when you look around the table, you have, there's someone who understands the business. There's actually someone who understands legal. There's somebody who understands coding. There's someone who understands development, release, testing. I mean, having a tester at the table at the beginning was like a foreign policy back when I started. It was like you code it, you test it yourself, then someone did some system testing, then it went live. But now that feedback loop is continuous, and in today's day and age, DevOps has come along, Sec DevOps has come along. That continuous change, that is the biggest change. Is that the speed of releases? Well, actually, sometimes maybe a bit too quick based on what happened on Friday. Is that continual change is happening all the time. So you have to rely on a lot more tooling and automation. I think that's probably the biggest difference. Before, a lot of that was hand cranked.
Yes. And just for context for listeners, because this will be released in a few weeks, by Friday, you mean the global IT outage? Yeah.
Someone released a bad driver. It went out to millions of machines. Before you know it, you're all down, right? So
chaos. Airports shut down. Offices
for one innocuous file that wasn't tested.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think the cyber criminals must be thinking, it was that easy.
Yeah.
How did we get it so wrong?
Yeah.
Right. But it goes back to that point about that's continual release, continual testing. I think that's the biggest change. That whole automation world has made life easier, but that's an investment as well. That takes time to get that up and running.
Sure.
And also then the skill set of people you're hiring, right?
Yeah.
You're expecting, people always say, full stack developers. I struggle with that sometimes, right? Because there are specialists in certain areas. People who understand databases, user experience. There's always going to be a nature nurture. You may be full stack, but actually sometimes you're better in one area. You can appreciate the full stack. I think you have to understand that. You don't need to be the best at everything in your stack.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I've hired hundreds of software developers over the past, many years, and I've never found a full stack developer really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more about full stack appreciation with a specialism in a certain area.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll be happy to have that. But I think that skill set, I also wonder about the people who are, coming out of university today, whether they're equipped with the right skills. I certainly wasn't. My university degree was computer science. It was theoretical. It was mathematical. It was all about theory. It was all about what could happen. The coding element was very lightweight, but it taught me enough of the basics. But I think logic is one of those things that is innately, it's there. You know what I mean? Like, if someone can put together, that's why you don't have to come from a computer science background to be a great engineer. Yeah. Right. I think that's a fallacy. I don't think you need to do that. If you can assemble, an IKEA bed without a set of instructions, you probably could be an engineer.
Sure.
Right. If you know what logic, if you know how to put one before another, there's only a couple of kind of, if you think about it, programming, paradigms you need to learn. Sure. The language will come. Yeah. Right. I don't think logic is harder to teach.
Yes.
I totally, I believe in that.
Yeah, the IKEA bed example is good because I recently put these huge light strips on my bed at home, and I basically turned my entire apartment into a smart home. Okay, so all the smart color changing lights and Alexas in every single room, and the Ring cameras and the vacuum, and I've gone full spectrum on this. I don't have a Google Nest thermostat, which I know that you have and you rate highly. What is that your main smart home product, or what do you have other things?
I think I got a lot of them. They're all connected. They're all voice activated or motion activated. I think the whole house you can't go through without something triggering somewhere. But I think the Google Nest one, I said it before, just so simple. Yeah, it's a big dial. It's physical still. It sits there. I can walk by it. And I can just wave my hand and it tells me what the temperature is, what the outside temperature is, what the inside temperature is. It's just a really nice piece of kit. Yeah. It's well designed. And then the ability that, we went away for a week, like I said, on holiday, and within a day it turned everything down. Because it realized there was no movement in the house. I forgot to turn off the system. Things would have been coming on and off. It just went, nope, powered down. Yeah. I loved it.
So I actually got to speak to Tony Fadell a few weeks ago, who created Nest, which was then sold to Google for billions. He also created the iPod, and he's got a book called Build, which is exceptional read. I think what I love about Tony is that whenever he builds a product, he does so beautifully, and he puts so much passion and energy into it. What do you think is important when building a product? How do you make it, I guess, beautiful? How do you make it stand out? How do you make it special?
I think aesthetics is important. I mean, I think that we're so used to a good experience now that I think it's almost become, table stakes.
Yeah, the minimum standard. It has to.
It's the minimum standard. It has to look good. And sometimes, it's function over form sometimes. You know what I mean? It looks really great and does nothing. Yeah. So I think it has to have a little bit of each. But if you can make a complex problem really simple, then adoption is easier. And I think this is why the Nest, go back to that. Before, trying to program a thermostat at home, oh my God, I took the manual out every time, and I'm from IT, and I still struggle to understand how to set my timer to come on in the morning and off in the evening, and then twice a day, and then turn off for holiday. I had literally this plastic box confused me. And then, the Nest came along, and it made something really difficult, very simple, and it looked good on the wall. I mean, that's it. I mean, that's a great product right there.
Yeah,
right?
I'm exactly the same. When I bought my apartment, I actually had to get one of the people in the building company to come around and show me how to use the thermostat, because even watching YouTube videos, I couldn't figure it out. So
still struggle. I have one upstairs. That's an old one that runs one part of the kind of system. And every time I go there, I'm Googling manual again. And even then, I'm like, is it 3 presses? Is it 2? You know what I mean? So I think going back to your point, function over form. But I still believe that if you can take something that's really complex and reduce it so it's very simple to use by someone who's not educated. And you think of what Apple have done in terms of the iPhone with taking complex. There's no manual for an iPhone.
No.
You open the box up, people are searching for the manual. I remember the first one came out, I remember thinking, okay, where's the 48-page manual to tell me, because I had a Nokia before that. Before that, a Nokia had every instruction of every key press and blah, blah, blah. There was nothing. And I thought, oh my God, and he turned it on. You thought, oh, man, I'm going to try different gestures, see what happens. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I was trying the Vision Pro the other day, and same thing. You don't need a tutorial, man. You just look where you want it to go, and you tap your fingers together. It was simple.
Yeah, I think it's moved on a little. I think almost now the children who are like my kids who are coming into it, that's their minimum level, right? I mean, if you show them anything that was even 4 or 5 years ago, they would struggle. Which is going to be interesting as the world evolves and the demand for that type of experience grows. You almost expect it everywhere. You know what I mean? I go to a hotel to check in. I'm like, why can't I use my phone to unlock the door? Because you start to expect this. So if so that means you've got to keep up with consumer demand, right? So that's going to be really interesting. Almost like things that are table stakes. Actually, that takes a bit of time and effort to do, right? But the world is moving in the pace of change is, I've never seen that before.
I was having this conversation the other day on the podcast with somebody, and I grew up as, I guess, the internet was starting to become a thing. I remember dial-up and a few things like that. But my kid's growing up. He's 1. He's growing up with ChatGPT, so it's a completely different.
It's a totally different
universe for him to experience.
It is, and I think everyone comes into a different. I'm not thinking that doesn't make them any more intelligent, no matter where they come in. It just makes their baseline a different starting point. Right, so their level of progress will be from here upwards, which means the people who are developing products and services have also got to, in some respects, move on. Right, so if you think about the industries that are going to fail, or the companies aren't going to make it, they're the ones who aren't going to listen to the consumers. Right, I mean, this goes back to the whole point of understanding your user base and understanding what they want. Right, it's really important. Otherwise, you'll end up, unless you have a product that you have a 100% captive market and they've got nowhere else to go, and you're like, well, actually, they've got no choice, right? But with choice means that it will be survival of the fittest, right?
Yeah. But even if you did own the TAM, eventually somebody else would come along and just break into it.
Well, you've seen that classic examples that they talk about Netflix and Blockbuster, and they talk about Kodak and digital. You've got to be able to jump on that kind of take it when you see it, right? And that takes a good leader. But also you have to keep your eye on what's happening externally, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes take a risk. You got to. I'm sure for all the one iPhone, I'm sure there are probably 1,000 prototypes that never quite made it. Yeah. Right. But you have to get there quickly. So people talk about fail fast, I think you succeed quicker, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
that really has to happen, right? Which goes back to automation, which goes back to tooling, which goes back to having a mixed team, diversity on your team, you know, age, sex, color, you know what I mean? I think all of that really makes those are your best teams.
Yeah.
Simple as.
Well, it certainly helps because you're not building products for a specific demographic in terms of age and ethnicity and gender. Most of the time, I mean, that's a bit kind of weird if you were. You're building it for all types of users. So if you've got all types of developers and creators building that, it's going to reflect those people better, won't it?
I think so, and that's why I really make sure that my teams are diverse, because of the thought process that having individuals will bring to the table from their backgrounds. For me, it's hugely valuable. I've never had all the answers, never will, but you have to listen to your team. And I've hired people before where the people have gone, never going to fit into our team. They're not like any of us, Mike. I'm like, that's the reason why. I said, and it's been a risk, and they've gone, because they're never going to fit in. You know, the pace of change is going to be too difficult. They haven't got the background. They haven't got the skills. And I said, those are all the reasons why we want this person.
Yeah.
Because actually they'll tell us things that we don't see.
Definitely.
Because we're so blinkered in the way that we do things.
The best companies that we've helped grow on the recruitment side, that they don't think in terms of culture fit. They think in terms of culture add, and how can that person add value and change the way that we do things.
Yeah.
That's the best way to go. We talked a minute ago about AI and ChatGPT.
Yeah.
It really has taken over the world over the past year, 2 years or so.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on, I guess, the future of artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I'm excited. I think I've said this before, a couple of other round tables I've done. I think mark the day when OpenAI came out. It'd be like the day that people invented Steam. I think it's very similar in terms of a revolution coming in, right? But it will take a bit of time, probably quicker than previous cycles of getting productivity out of it. Because it's just going to become ubiquitous, right? It's just going to be here. I mean, I'm seeing it all the time without even realizing it. I mean, now I'm even expecting it. You know, like if I'm doing a search now, I'm like, well, actually, I don't want to just give me a page. I want you to summarize that page and tell me the best 3 restaurants to go to when I'm on holiday. Yeah. And book the table and tell me there's a reservation. Sure. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I'm almost expecting that assistance from AI to do things. But it doesn't change. I'm still eating at the restaurant. I'm still going at 8 p.m. The food's still going to be served by somebody. It's just that the friction was taken out of it. Which gives me more time to do other things, potentially.
Of course, and I agree with the search example. GPT has replaced most of my Googling, to be honest. It hasn't replaced the eating of the food yet. We need 3D printers printing food and
exactly. So I think get excited, test it. Don't jump in too quickly into any one vendor. I think all of them will have amazing products coming out. But keep reading, keep understanding it. Go back to basics. There's some great tutorials about, again, being curious, right? When it first came out, whatever it was, a year, I can't remember, it was a year and a bit ago, I spent the first 2 months just trying to understand how the hell does that large language model work? What do they mean tokens? I mean, literally, I was there trying to work out how it got so quickly from a theoretical paper. And there's an original paper as well you can read. This is great. So I think, again, be curious, right? So if you're a technologist, don't just accept it at face value.
Definitely. And I agree. You should use different models. I love Perplexity, and there's so many great ones like Claude and Grok is great for real-time info because it's linked into X. I think I would say, just keep searching, keep trying, keep learning. Totally. So I know you love the book Drive by Daniel Pink, which talks about internal versus external motivation. I love that book as well. I read it a couple of years ago, and I actually emailed my notes to Daniel Pink, and he replied and answered some of my questions that I had. But great read. I've given that book, gifted it to employees and people, probably over like 30 copies over the years. It's a great read and probably one of my favorites. For those that don't know Drive, could you just tell us a little bit about the key concepts?
Again, it was given to me as part of the leadership program. One of many books that I probably read. So probably not just one book. It's just one probably one that stuck to me because it's quite simple. But I think the whole intrinsic and extrinsic values of an organization is really important in this day and age where everything feels very, how would I say, transient. You know what I mean? We're in an age where children can't sit down for more than 3 seconds without going to the next screen.
It's crazy.
And imagine jobs are going to be very similar. People will always start to think about, is that better than this job? Is that better than this job?
Yes.
Should I keep moving? Should I keep moving?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a good thing. You know, people stay at companies for 30 years. Some don't. I haven't, but I kept on learning. But I think I think about companies that, in that book, it's really simple. It talks about intrinsic, which is you kind of need to pay a living wage.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right. No one's a charity.
Yeah.
Unless you've got a trust fund, which some people have, I haven't. So at the end of the day, you need enough money to get me through the door. Okay, that's great. So now I don't feel worried about my bills at the end of the month. Fantastic. I can go on holiday once a year. Great. Now keep me interested. So the extrinsic value is, well, actually now I'm through the door and you pay me a decent salary. Am I enjoying what I'm doing? Do I feel purpose? Do I feel connected to the reason why this company exists? And so that's harder with some companies, obviously.
Yeah.
Right. And they get around that by just paying more on the first one, which is, if you just pay them a lot of money, give them a massive bonus, they won't care about the value and the purpose of the organization because it's a little bit tenuous.
It kind of works short term, but your first answer that you gave to the original question at the beginning about, advice for people getting into technology, I think this summarizes the book perfectly. You said you were passionate about it. You enjoyed building stuff. It was internal. It was intrinsic. Yeah. It wasn't just about waving a carrot in front of you, and and that's why you do what you do.
And if you look at my first couple of years in my career, it was always about the next job, which is all about the next pay packet, which is all about making a bit more than the last time. I wasn't linked into the value of the company. The purpose wasn't shared to me, maybe. I didn't get it.
Yeah.
But when I joined the company, like in 2011, they worked really hard on the purpose. They're an insurance company. It sounds really boring, it's like insurance. But they said, actually, we're here because people need us in their hour of need.
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, God, insurance is boring. And someone said, but no, when that flood happens, when that hurricane hits, and when that place gets wiped out in one part of the world, we're going to be there.
Sure.
And we will pay out, and they'll be back on their feet. I remember thinking, there's a reason why I write this bit of code. It has a link. And if you can link people and employees, and it's very difficult, like I said, in some areas, to the reason of why they have to turn up to work on a Monday and do a really long week, not because they get paid, because you already got them through the door, which means you must be paying them enough money.
Yeah.
If you can then explain to them the reason why their role is really important and it has a purpose and a vision, they'll stay a bit longer. Right? And that's great companies built to last, another great book. Will have those values and those purposes. And they don't have to be, cliche. Some are really bad and you go, I'm not sure why that exists. But hey, pay me more money and I'll stay a bit longer. Yeah. That's what normally happens.
Definitely.
Right? But I think if you get those both right, and that book talks about that, you'll have a company that will last a long time.
Yeah. You talked about traveling a moment ago, and I find that traveling keeps me really motivated because I can, learn about different cultures and different ideas and get different experiences, and it's very inspiring. I lived in New Zealand for a couple of years, and I've traveled a lot of Asia. My wife is Chinese, so that helps as well. And, when going places. You spent a year traveling the world. You did 16 countries, 6 continents, 22 flights.
I won't do that again, but yeah. That's hard work.
Yeah, long time ago. But do you agree that, I guess, having that difference in perspective can, help you become more creative and see things differently?
I think what it gave me was the ability to try new things and step out of my comfort zone. Yeah. So I'm bringing that back into the real world, doing that for 12 months, not knowing where we were going to sleep that night, not knowing what bus we were going to take, what train we were going to catch. Every day, it made you, like I said, it goes back to that kind of like, what are you going to do? You're problem solving continuously, and you're thinking continuously, is it option A? Is it option B? It's like strategy. Strategy is just choices. Yeah. Okay. That's all it is. There's 20 choices on the table. Your strategy will be choose 1 to 10 and ignore 11 to 20. Yeah. Similarly, when you're traveling the world, you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I can go to if I'm in South America, we landed in Santiago in Chile after a 14-hour arduous flight from Auckland, actually. Okay. Yeah. The longest journey I've ever done in a plane. Yeah. And you land in Chile, in Santiago. Do we go north or do we go south? Yeah. Right. Pros and cons, options, choices. If I go south, very quickly you're solutioning. If I go south, I'm then going to be stuck at the bottom. The only way to navigate through is to go back through Argentina. If I go north, I go to Bolivia. You're thinking. So actually, bringing those skills to traveling, you don't really think about it. It makes you think on your feet very quickly, right? And it makes you change your circumstances, makes you become a chameleon in the right circumstances. Yeah. When you're facing options, or in some cases, there were tricky situations, traveling, I think having those, being a bit out of your comfort zone will really test your mettle.
Yeah.
And then coming back home again, work was easy. I thought, oh my God, if I can spend, 12 months on the road. I went with my wife at the time. So if we can survive 12 months on the road, life's easy after that.
Yeah, that chameleon point is so true. And I guess last question, but I heard that you had this story during your consulting days where you were hired as a Oracle DBA, right?
Yeah.
But you didn't know Oracle, so you had to very quickly learn and be a chameleon. And most people don't put themselves in those uncomfortable situations because it's
I think
scary.
naivety helped in that one, is what I'm going to say on that one. But totally, I think, again, I was given an opportunity. It was a contract role.
Yeah.
I was working for a consultancy company, so obviously you have to sometimes learn very quickly on your feet.
Yeah.
So I was being sent to a project. The project needed an Oracle DBA. Like I said, landed first day, project manager took me to the side and said, right, so you've been brought in as the Oracle DBA. I literally went, Oracle DBA, there's the book. I went, okay. I started to read it, started to understand it. Didn't know all the answers, but I was willing to try.
Yeah.
And I didn't have all the answers. But the thing was, I got there and people were like, we can help you, we can teach, you know what I mean? So I think just kind of reaching out, taking that opportunity, that opened up another door, which meant I met a whole bunch of consultants who I hadn't met before. I worked for a company I wouldn't have worked before. I went and lived in a place I wouldn't have worked.
Sure.
So suddenly, I think don't overthink it sometimes.
Yeah.
I've got and I think it goes two ways. I've had a lot of friends who have been very prescriptive in their career. I'm going to go and do economics. I'm going to go and join a bank. You know what I mean? That's great. I've got no problem with that. And if you have that desire and drive at that age, I mean, hats off to you. I'm like, when you're 18 and 21, 22, I mean, just trying to get out of bed's like a hard work, you know what I mean? The fact that you actually got a career plan, I'm like, amazing.
Yeah.
If you haven't got a career plan, then the other thing is just try stuff. And it's okay to get it wrong. It's okay to fail. It's okay to don't do it too often. And I say this to my kids, it's like, you can make a mistake, make as many mistakes as you want, just don't make the same mistake twice. Because then you haven't learned anything. No. So make a mistake, learn, get better, realize what you're good at. And as you make mistakes, understand maybe you need to pivot and go and try something else. And eventually you'll start to understand where that fulcrum of where the balance is. And once you get that right, you'll be good at what you do.
Amazing. Cool. That's been like a masterclass in how to get into tech, how to stay sane when you're working in tech, and your thoughts about the future. I guess if people have enjoyed this and they want to check out you, would LinkedIn be the best place?
Yeah, LinkedIn's good. Come ping me. Always happy to go for a coffee, give some advice. I don't really give advice because I think, if you want advice, you'll come and find me. But I'm happy to always want to kind of introduce people to technology. If they have a passion, then I have a passion. I think I've bounced off people who have a passion, like yourself. Like, when you sent me those list of questions, I thought, hey, he gets it. You know what I mean? And I kind of thought, okay, I'm going to make the effort, come across here. So here I come, cycle across, got here, we're doing this podcast. Similarly, if someone's at work and the virtual door is always open. I love it when someone pings me and says, can we just talk about X? I'm like, let's go for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I love that conversation, that intellectual, teach me something I don't really know.
Yeah.
Vice versa, reverse mentoring, right? I think it's really important.
Yeah. Amazing.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
No problem.
Cool. Hey, thanks for watching this podcast. Make sure that you like, subscribe, follow, comment, etc., and I'll see you in the next episode.